don't care how you do. You just got to try your absolute hardest. And that's what I want you to do. And I said to myself, there's no way I can go home if I haven't done what I've been preaching to my kids for 18, 20 years. And so that's why I pushed myself as hard as I did.
Welcome to The Bright Side of Life, a podcast where people share their personal stories of struggles, pain, and grief, but through all of that, they are still able to find the joys in life. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Bright Side of Life. I am your host, Melissa Bright. Today, I'm talking with Larry Roberts, who was on season 2 and 5 of History Channel's hit TV show Alone. Larry survived 64 days on Vancouver Island, being the second to last participant to tap out, and 41 days in Mongolia, being the third to last person to tap out. Larry, thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So what made you want to be a part of Alone?
The test of it. I have always been interested in, especially young, early on, Native Americans and their way of life and their lifestyle. And I just, would look at an arrowhead or something and just absolutely just be blown away by the beauty of it. And so that got me into primitive skills and survival type stuff. I put that stuff off once I got married, had kids. Once they kind of grew up and stuff, I was able to dive back into it. And I was able to practice a lot. And these survival shows were coming out and they were fantastic. I didn't know there were other people out there that liked doing this stuff like I did. And once I saw how big the community was and how knowledgeable some of these people were, like I said, I started really training hard. And then for me, Alone was a chance to see really how good my skills were, if they were up to par or anything. I tell folks it's like if you were to practice for a game all the time, say football, if you were able to practice all the time but never playing a game, it would kind of get boring. And so this was like my Super Bowl of testing my skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just realized that I forgot to even mention what the show is. So I'm going to do that really quick. Alone is the ultimate survivalist competition. It puts 10 people up against each other completely alone and isolated in a location to see who can survive the longest with only 10 items of their choosing, all while self-documenting in the hopes to win the grand prize of $500,000. How long in advance did you know the destination that you were going to be going to? And it could be either Vancouver Island or Mongolia.
I guess I can't really remember for Vancouver Island, but it wasn't that long. It was maybe 2 weeks, I think. Mongolia, we knew we were going to that part of the world. I think maybe 3 weeks in advance, maybe a month, but it wasn't spelled out probably until maybe 2 weeks beforehand. That's my recollection. I could be off a little bit, but it was not a lot of time.
Yeah. And had you already basically like signed up, or was there any way if they set a place that you were just like, no way, I'm out? Was that even an option, or was it pretty much wherever they choose, I'm going to go and see what I can do?
Well, for me personally, it was wherever they chose, I would go. If you wanted to opt out, I don't know. There's a lot of contracts and involved. I would not want to be a part of that, I don't think.
Yeah, that's what I figured. What was your survival plan going into? I know Vancouver Island's much further in memory, being in 2016, right?
I'll
20.
take your word. It was
Yeah,
about 5 years ago, I think. But yeah, that sounds.
yeah. What was your survival plan going in to that to the very first time you were on Alone?
Well, it was for me personally. I put a lot of pressure on myself, so I was very, very nervous. I did not want to. If you saw season 1, you saw folks left quite early, some of them, and I didn't want to have that happen to me because I overlooked something or whatever. I just put a lot of pressure on myself. So but the first thing I wanted to do was to find a decent camping spot so that I could set up and protect myself from the rain. Because and every location is sometimes the question comes up, what's the first thing to do in a quote survival situation? It depends on the location. Vancouver Island, it rains, they measure the rainfall in feet. And so I did not want to, get, be stuck out with all my clothes wet and not have a good shelter system. Water's taken care of, obviously, because it rains all the time. And, the area that I was by, I had a creek that I just kind of rolled the dice. I figured it was a pretty natural, pristine area. So I just drank right out of the creek. So I didn't boil my water or anything, but water was taken care of. And of course, I've done some training in the past where I've fasted for like 3 days. And so I knew that I wouldn't, food, I'm not going to die if I don't have a, snack within a couple of hours. But if you get rained on in the middle of the night, you can get hypothermia, then that's a potential problem. So for me, the first thing was a good shelter location. And then after the shelter and water was taken care of, then I wanted to start on food and then just always trying to improve my situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going down the questions here. What did you think, and you might have just answered this, but what did you think before going on to the show? Let's just talk Vancouver Island was going to be the biggest hurdle for you.
Well, I think I was even in like one of the pre episodes or something on the show. One of the producers, I remember this, one of the producers asked me, what do you think would make you tap out in this place? And I remember thinking to myself, the only thing that I could think of would be lack of calories, lack of food. And that's exactly what got me. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And that was going to be my next question. Was that the biggest hurdle, like what you thought it was? Okay. How much more difficult was surviving out there with having to document everything that you did, or such a great part of it? Did that add to the challenge?
Oh, absolutely. I had a little bit of experience just because I have a tiny little YouTube channel. And so I have, had the challenge of trying to set the cameras up and, do a survival skill and then coming back to my computer and trying to edit it and trying to figure out what I could do better next time. But the show was, a million times harder than that. You have, it made it at least 3 times as hard, I would imagine. I mean, all the shots of us in our respective areas were us filming. If it was a far away shot, we set the camera up, and of course we always mic'd up every day, so we had batteries that we had to check. It was a routine. I did mine in the morning. I always checked all my batteries and stuff, and then I would load my pockets with extra mic batteries and then also extra camera batteries. Once in a while, if I figured I was going to be off for a long time, I'd carry extra SD cards. And then you're always, when you're filming, you're always looking at the viewfinder. I always turn the viewfinder towards me so I could look at the status and check. And yeah, I mean, you're just always checking that out. And like I was saying, a far away shot, you set the camera up, you do your, far away walk away scene, and then you got to come back and pick up this, camera. The camera, it's funny, the tripod probably weighed almost as much as the camera did. It was a beefy tripod. Both times they were the same stuff. But yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And then they'll come a while and say, hey, could you film a little bit more? You're not really doing very much,
Oh, they would?
Not to me. In Mongolia, they did in the first week. They said, hey, you're not turning in enough footage, because what they'll do is you film both seasons. They checked on me, and I'm sure everybody else, quite quickly, just to make sure you're okay, settled in. Want to make sure, they'll come out and the producers will say, okay, are you, everything's all right, your camera's working okay, whatever. And then they leave, and then they usually come by every week or 2 weeks, and they have to change out all the batteries and the SD cards. And by that, when they get those first SD cards, they start going through the footage, and they see, I don't know, they must fast forward really fast, or I don't know, but they're checking to see how much you're filming. And if you're not filming enough, then they can let you know on their next visit, after they,
See
bring all your
everything.
stuff, they can say, film some more.
Yeah. Wow. I remember always commenting on the far shots being like, God, they have to go back and get this camera, but just do this for this scene right here. And some of the terrain that you had to walk up and just have that camera you were holding, oh my gosh, props to you because it looked really, really difficult to do.
Well, thank you. That's why I was so impressed with the season 4 people, the teams. Some folks didn't like that particular aspect of it, but you have to give credit to those poor people that had to walk. Like, some of them had to walk almost 10 miles through that stuff. I mean, that's insane. I
Yeah.
mean, footage, revealed that place is almost impassable sometimes.
Yep, yep. And when we first started watching that season, we could not believe that was going to be it. And I said, "Oh, how long?" I asked my boyfriend, "How long do you think it'll take them to get to the other person?" He's like, "I don't know, like a day." And like we're on like day 7 and I'm like, "Oh my, like this is insane."
Yeah.
I I could not believe it. Um, were were you allowed to delete any footage?
No, and they specifically told us that they could tell by, I don't know, they're computer guys, but they can tell if there's a scene missing. If you turned, they can tell somehow, and they would have been quite upset.
Yep.
And you were allowed to, well, they didn't, they would have never known if you reviewed footage. But the only time I ever reviewed footage was the first mouse kill that I did, because I remember getting done with it, and I got kind of calmed down and stuff, and I thought, oh man, I'm gonna come off like a maniac on this. And I watched it and I thought, oh, I mean, I was tempted to delete it. I was really tempted, but I thought, you know what? It is what it is.
It was the best. It was the best footage for sure. Um, did you have a number of days that you wanted to get to no matter what, without knowing anything, just in your head for a personal goal?
No, there wasn't. I just wanted to make sure that I left everything out there. I wanted to make sure that I exhausted every possibility for not staying another day. Once I hit day 30, I was pretty happy with myself. I figure if you can survive for a month in the wilderness, I mean, you're doing pretty good. So I
Mhm.
was quite happy with that milestone. And then it got exponentially harder for me every day after about day 30, day 35. And day 30, I made a goal for myself to stay to day 40. Day 40, I made a goal to myself, but then pretty soon it was just make it one more day.
Yep.
No, I didn't have a set day
Okay.
going.
Yeah. Did you who did you think, or did you have anybody in your head who you thought would be the toughest competition for Vancouver Island?
I thought that Jose would be the toughest competition. I either thought, let me think for a minute. I knew Jose, I just figured the way his lifestyle and everything, I
Mhm.
figured he'd kill a bear and tan the hide and have a bear, rug and a fireplace made. And he almost did with his kayak.
Right.
He made a kayak with his Leatherman, right?
Yep.
So everybody else was quite skilled as well, but we didn't get to know each other as well as the folks that went on season 5, because by then we all had kind of either seen each other on TV or physically met. Like I had, and then we got to spend some time together too. So,
Yeah.
it wasn't as definitive for me on season 5, but season 1, I really thought Jose was going to go all the way.
Yeah. And what was something that was easier than you thought it was going to be?
I would say, and it's going to sound bad, but being
Mhm.
alone, because I'm an only child, so I grew up basically alone. Although I've spent more time with my wife than I have, as a kid. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the folks are um, needing that human contact, and we all need human contact. but I seem to need it less. That's just my personality style.
Mhm.
I knew my wife was going to be here. I knew my kids were going to be here. I knew I had the support of my family, my mom, stuff like that. Um, but that was, I would say, easier for me than a lot of other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you ever get a full night's rest in either place? Um, sometimes the documentation, I just didn't know. I'm like, are they sleeping 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours?
Vancouver Island, I was probably sleeping 16 hours a night,
Oh,
especially
wow.
toward, yeah, the only time I got up. So in Vancouver Island, I would go to bed when it got dark and wake up well after it got light. And the only time I would wake up in Vancouver Island at night was if I had to go to the bathroom or check my lines, my trout lines that I had out in the ocean. And actually, I would hydrate myself in order to have to go up to go to the bathroom. And then that would be the time that was ready. The tides were low enough that I could go check my trout lines. In other words, the tides change throughout the night. Sometimes they're early in the evening, and sometimes they're late at night. So if
Hmm.
they're early in the evening, I wouldn't hydrate because then I wouldn't have to get up in the middle of the night to go pee. But
Right.
if they were at like 2 or 3 in the morning, I drank some water before I went to bed. I knew I'd have to wake up, so I'd wake up, go pee, check my trout lines, stuff like that, catch my fish, and then I would usually got my fish and put them in a creek. At a creek that would run down, that would be my refrigerator, and then I'd wake up and have a meal or store it there if I'd already had a fish or something like that.
Yeah. So the 16 hours, were you just sleeping just to pass the time and there was just nothing else to do or what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. I wanted to conserve energy. Um, I I can be a crafty person, but I'm not inherently a crafty person. And then also for me, I wanted to my philosophy, my survival philosophy, um, is you conserve every resource you have. So basically, with a lot of the crafty things, you have to use your knife. And I didn't want to dull my knife any more than I absolutely had to. I always kept it sharp. I was always able to sharpen it, but it's still a resource that just to pass the time, I didn't want to mess with. There was a few projects that I did, but not just constantly doing that. And then, yeah, I just wanted to conserve energy, so I would just lay in bed for. I mean, there was nothing more, especially towards the end. There wasn't really anything more I could do.
Right.
You know,
Well, and also like with the knife, that's just if you're using your knife for making crafts, that's more risk that you could potentially cut yourself or, something as simple as that because it did happen on the show. So,
right?
not,
Exactly.
yep. Do you think you would have made it as far as you did on season 2 um because you moved the you moved locations? Um I mean, you knew the risk that you had to take moving locations, but do you think you would have survived staying in the first spot?
Yeah, I think I would have survived. I think I would have survived as long as I did in my second location, but I don't know if I'd have been way more depressed. I think now I don't know how the fish patterns changed in my first location,
Mhm.
but I was catching fish in my first location quite, you know, consistently. So I don't know. I think maybe I would have had more food and my stomach would have felt better, maybe, but my mind maybe might not have been as good. I don't know. That's a good question. I've thought about that. And I even thought about when I was in my second location, I thought about making the trip back to my first location, fishing there, and then coming back to my second location to sleep. But with the mountain lions and the bears and the wolves and stuff, I just didn't want to be carrying fish at night, back to my other camp. Because a lot of the times I was checking my lines at night. The
Mhm.
biggest time for me seemed to happen at night. And I didn't, that was kind of a long distance, probably 400 or 500 yards. And that would have taken a lot. And yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, but I know it was really depressing at that first place. It was fun catching fish, but I mean, it was a cave.
Right,
And it
right.
was a bad shelter location. I mean, I was sleeping under a fallen cedar log.
Right.
It had a hole in the ground.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, the spot two just seems so much more open, and it's like you're choosing the lesser of two evils. Because, like you said, looking back on it now, what would have taken me out? What we know it was, the food and the hunger, but it could have been you just got so depressed at the at the first location.
Right. Right.
Is there any footage that they didn't show of your experience that you wish that they would have?
Yeah, I wished they would have shown me making a flint and steel fire on day 60 in Vancouver Island. I had saved a piece of quartz that I'd found on the beach, and my belt buckle was actually a flint and steel striker, a piece of steel that had been tempered correctly that could produce a spark when struck with a hard, semi-sharp
Hmm.
rock like a piece of quartz can be. And I made what's called char cloth from, I had a schmog, one of those big bandanas. I
Yep.
cut apart that off and I made what's known as char cloth. And so then I made a spark with my flint and steel and made a fire. And I wish they would have shown that.
Yeah.
Mongolia, day 40. Mongolia, I didn't have the mental fortitude I did in Vancouver Island. Mongolia for me was an easier place to survive for the most part, but mentally harder to survive. And in Mongolia, I knew that I was going to be tapping within the next day or two. So on day 40, I made it a craft day, and that's when I made my birch, goggles, and I made my day 40 fire with a bow drill. So I took a little piece of cordage and got two pieces of spindle and
Yeah.
and made a bow drill fire.
Yeah.
So
Just
there
to
were a
see if
couple.
you could do it.
I figured I could do it, but I just wanted to. Mongolia, I was in a lot better mental place. So Mongolia, I was more celebrating my tapping out, where in Vancouver Island, I was dreading it and just really depressed, kind of. Where
Yeah.
Mongolia, the healing experience. So yeah, just to kind of see that I could do it, but then also just to kind of pay homage or whatever to the whole experience and the whole area. Just
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah. So did you get excited when you would see people for med checks, and now like you said when they come to check your video? Would you be excited to see another person?
No, I didn't like it when they interviewed me. Uh, no, I didn't like seeing them. I wish I would have never. I wish it could have been done without person to person contact.
Yeah.
And they did Mongolia try to limit that because they did like a dead drop. So they
Mhm.
would drop a backpack off. You're supposed to grab your stuff out of it, and then you put your old stuff in there. But no, the personal contact. Um, I was, for some reason, I was an emotional wreck when they talked to me and when they interviewed me and stuff. I could be having a great day, and they'd come and they'd say, are you going to do anything else today? How are you improving your situation? And I'd just break down and cry and just be like, I'm doing everything I can, or just way overly dramatic, overly emotional. And then they'd leave, and I'd be fine again.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I didn't like it.
Did it seem that way? And I don't know if you've talked to other participants, but did it seem that way? Because sometimes it did seem like on the show that people just didn't like when they were there. I don't know if it's because they had to undress and be cold or for whatever reason, but it almost seemed more of like an annoyance that they were there.
It was an annoyance because they would interrupt your day. They would text you on your little GPS and they'd say med check today or something. And they're not going to give, you don't really have a time really to
Right.
judge by. So they're just going to show up sometimes. So you have to kind of maybe stay around camp when you were going to go out. And then they come and they add, and bless them. I mean, they're TV folks and they're trying to make a TV show,
Right.
but to be asked these questions all the time, digging in it yourself, you're already given everything it seems like that you have, but they always just want a little bit more.
Yep.
And like I said, they're trying to get everything out of you they can. But it hurts times, and it's for me it hurt. It was just I don't. I'm doing everything I can. I don't want to be asked these questions right now. I've already got my mind in a certain spot. I want to be back where I was. I don't want to deal with person to person contact because all you're doing is just interfering with my surviving and
Yep.
even though really nice people and stuff, but that
Right.
was my personal opinion of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, kind of going off of that, what was it like Was it easy? Was it hard? Was it embarrassing to be on camera and being that vulnerable? I obviously don't know you before the show and before this podcast, but sometimes I'm assuming that could probably be really hard for a man and then for the whole world to go see it.
Right, right. No, I know that when I got done, so when I was filming it, I really didn't have a problem with it because I'm just there. It's the only thing I can talk to. I'm talking to it, I'm doing my job by filming, and I'm just spilling my guts to this thing. And when I did YouTube, I would edit out a lot of, maybe my temper tantrums or whatever. And, and but they just aired them. And so I remember watching it, and yeah, it was, well, especially like with the first temper tantrum with me stomping on the tree. My son's best friend, and I were all watching it, and they got such a kick out of it. They were laughing so hard they had to rewind it and play it again, rewind it, and play it again. But as far as the emotional stuff, when I started like really breaking down and stuff, yeah, I was kind of worried about that as soon as I got out and fed, about 3 or 4 days later, I thought, man, those last 10 days were pretty rough, and there was a lot of footage on there. Maybe would have been probably best if I didn't show. But on the other hand, I mean, I wanted folks to be able to see everything. And that's what the producers told us. They said, film everything. We want to see everything. And I get so many messages. I was just showing, actually, my wife asked me if I'd got any messages lately. And I get about 2 messages a day that, that thank me for being so honest and just filming everything. And so, I mean, it's really, I got a little bit of negative comments early on when I was cussing and doing all that stuff, but at the end, just breaking down and just filming everything, I get a lot of messages that say that they really appreciate that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is kind of embarrassing, but you know what? It is what it is. I was
Yeah.
there and starving, and you want to come on out with me one time? We'll see how you do.
Exactly.
Oh, but everybody's been really, really kind.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you were just being your authentic self. And that's what, the show asked of you. And like you said, if you want to go out there and see how it is and, almost fall down and what did that tree almost go through your collarbone? I remember that.
well, it didn't go. Yeah, well, that's what I was a little bit worried about. But yeah, yeah, it was. Um, yeah, I actually looked through my shirt to make sure that it didn't pierce the skin. I don't think it was on the bone, but it was up on my shoulder. But I remember it was something that I thought, crap, I don't want a piece of branch sticking out of there. Whatever it was.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I was more scared than anything, and that's sometimes when I'm scared, that's how I react.
Yep. Same here. Same here. It's fine. um, I don't know if you remember saying this quote, but this was towards the end, and you said at one point, you can endure a lot of things when you're doing something for someone else, but when you are doing them for only yourself, it becomes much harder. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Because it's easier to give up on yourself than someone else, especially someone else that you love. You always, well, at least everybody in my life always puts the people that they love above themselves. We make mistakes, and we don't do that sometimes, but as a general rule, we put others above ourselves, and that's the way it should be. But I it is a lot easier to do things for other people than it is for yourself, and I that's part of the reason that drove me to go as far as I did, is because I was doing it for myself, but then I was also doing it for my family. And there was another thing that I said about how I couldn't quit because I had told my son when and both my daughter and my son, but when they play sports, I don't care how you do, you just got to try your absolute hardest. And that's what I want you to do. And I said to myself, there's no way I can go home if I haven't done what I've been preaching to my kids for 18, 20 years. And
Yeah.
so that's why I pushed myself as hard as I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's obviously struggles in survival, getting food, water, fire. Did the mental aspect prove to be more challenging than you thought it would?
No, not really. The only reason the mental challenge became a factor is because I had no calories. If I would have been fed, I could have stayed out there for quite a while.
Hmm.
But if you, the emotions, things like that start getting darker and darker, the less calories you had. And it just, it's just a graph. The less calories, the more the emotion. And so if I would have had food, I don't think it would have, I don't think I would have had the breakdown crying episodes that I did. Sure, I was going through things with the real world, with my work and dealing with the fact, we empty nest syndrome hit me really, and it hit us both really hard.
Mm.
And so I was dealing with that and stuff like that. But as far as, just the gut wrenching crying, it was just my body eating itself. And it was a bad deal.
Yeah. How long had you been an empty nester when you went on the show? Had it been months or?
I It was not that long. My son had just left for the military, I think maybe a couple of years before, and then I think it was my daughter's first year of college, if I remember right. So it was less than a year.
Yeah. My daughter just left for college also, and well, she's been home, but now she leaves again on Monday. So I know exactly how you
Well,
feel.
sorry for you.
I
Good.
know.
Sorry for you.
Yeah, but she's close, so it's good, but sometimes it can be hard. Um, okay, so I know going out there was important to you because you wanted a new aspect on life. You had been married since you'd been 18. You had your kids when you guys were around 20 years old, and now you were an empty nester. So you wanted a new aspect on life. Do you feel that you achieved that being out there?
Absolutely. Alone really changed my life, some for the worse and a lot for the better. But when you have a lot of time to think, when you're just sitting out there alone, I mean, you can only do so much stuff, and your mind, you got nobody to talk to, and pretty soon you just kind of start thinking of things. Now, it's kind of like a New Year's resolution. So you're in the moment, you make the New Year's resolution, and then when you get done with the experience, you have to keep trying and reaching back to that experience to hold on to whatever goal you want to achieve. But yes, alone has given me a different perspective on life. Um, I've always had, I've always just wanted basically a solid family unit, and I've achieved that, and we're doing really good and stuff. But I was having some issues with work, just getting my head around it, getting my head around the empty nesting syndrome, getting my head around getting older, things like that. And alone helped me. The first season, the season two I was on, kind of broke me down, but also taught me a lot of things. And Mongolia kind of reaffirmed the things that I'd learned, the positive things from Vancouver that I'd learned, but then also uh, kind of brought closure and more of a happiness type thing in Mongolia.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I noticed, which is amazing. So, okay, so we're going to talk about season 2 of Tapping Out. You have made it 64 days, and I know that you said that the hunger is what got you. Um, what happens after you tap out? Like, where do you go? What do you do? Um, do you get to eat immediately?
Well, in Vancouver Island, so what they did is basically they make triple, quadruple sure that you're tapping out. They say, we need to hear you say the words. Are you sure? And then you're filming everything. And so, yep, you tap out. So it takes them a little while to get there. And then they have the cameraman there, and they're looking at your reaction. And I was, I felt I left. So the guy I hugged was the survival consultant. I
Yeah.
felt that I was down, but anyway, he's, you know, got a goofy slobbered American on him. But anyway, we talked for a while. Um, there's just a raw emotion. They film for a while. Then once things are kind of calmed down, they let me have some broth, like like an organic chicken broth or something, and I sip on that. And then we continue to interview, continue to do different things. I pack up all my stuff. They film all that stuff. Takes a couple of hours at least. And then we get on the boat, and then they're filming me the whole time. But then the boat captain had made some banana pancakes that morning, and they had brought me, I think, an avocado and a hard-boiled egg, just really nutritious things. And I
Hmm.
went slow, but then I ate. Took me back to a cabin where I was sequestered, kind of. I mean, they don't want it's in Vancouver Island. It's a very small population, and they had known from season one that that these folks were filming a show,
Hmm.
so they didn't want any leaks getting out or anything. So I was kind of sequestered, and they had me film my first meal. They came in, they asked if I had a grocery list or whatever, and I had a million bad things. And then the lady's like, look, you should put a couple good things on there too. But then they go out and they get me food or whatever and brought it back, and I'm supposed to film everything. I film myself eating, and then yeah. And then I was in the cabin for probably 2 days. Then I went to, so that was Vancouver Island. And then I went to Vancouver for about a day and a half or 2 days, and then I flew home. I got home the day after Thanksgiving, I think.
Yeah. Jeez. And I was curious about the eating because I know, when you are that low on calories, you're not used to having full 1,500, 2,000 calories that you can't just go ham on your first meal or it could really mess you up or whatever. So I was just curious how that was and what you did get to eat.
Well, it depends on the person. So, and the show has also learned since we started. The show really didn't have any idea. Um, I shouldn't say any idea, but I mean, the show has learned.
Hmm.
And especially after, especially like maybe Patagonia and stuff, where the folks lasted a really long time, they more took the refeeding process more seriously. So after I tapped out on season 2, they did take me to a doctor. The
Hmm.
doctor gave me vitamins, and then he also gave me a sheet of paper that explained refeeding syndrome. And so I tried to take it careful, but I just figured I'd be able to handle it. So, I mean, my first meal was a bacon cheeseburger with a root beer float. I just chucked. And eventually I had to set a timer on my watch so that I wouldn't eat more than 2 hours. So I would wait 2 hours at a time. But I
Yep.
mean, I ate a lot of good things, but I also ate a lot of garbage. And luckily for me, it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
But I know like Carly and Megan from season 3
Yep.
had refeeding issues. And yeah, it can be really hard on your stuff, on your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, when did you learn that there was only one person left on season 2? And how did you feel about that?
They don't tell you.
They don't?
They don't tell you how many people are left.
If you ask them, they won't even tell you?
Oh,
Oh, wow. So when did you find out that there was only one person left?
when I got home
Oh,
after
okay.
yeah. Once I
Jeez.
mean, because I tapped out, and then they were really not supposed to talk to each other, but of course we're all friends and stuff. So
Yep.
it was, um, they had all been talking, and then once I finally got home, there's a restriction on when you can get on social media
Mhm.
again.
Mhm.
So I got, maybe said hello or something on Facebook or something. And then I got a bunch of text and stuff from the participants, and they said, but I mean, they are really adamant. The producers are really adamant that you can't talk about the show, and they kind of, I mean, they make you sign some serious paperwork. And
Right.
so, yeah. Anyway, I had kind of found out my position, and then by deduction, I was able to figure out who the winner was. But no, they don't tell you when you're out there that you've only got 5 people left, or there's 10 people left, or whatever. You just keep going for as long as you can.
Yeah. Did you have any idea like I have to be like the last 5? Like there's no way.
Yeah, I figured towards the end, I'm like, man, I've got to be. Well, that was one you asked me earlier, like if there was a day goal,
Mhm.
and um, I think more than a day goal. I'm a little bit competitive too, and I loved all the people that went out with us. I'm like, just let me finish in the middle of the pack somewhere or something. Don't make me like number one or something. But
Yeah.
oh, I mean, when you're out there, or when I was out there, and I've talked to like Dave and
Hmm.
a lot of the other people, we all thought everybody else was living it up the high life in style, had killed, like all these animals, had all these furs, and that's not the case,
Right.
what we all thought, kind of.
Yep. Yep. So now you decided to go. Well, actually, that is going to be my question. You were on season 5 of Alone, and that was in Mongolia. So, how did you come to this decision to come back on the show, or did they invite you back? How did that process work?
Well, it wasn't long after I got done with Vancouver Island that I wanted to go back to do another season. I'm like, give me another chance. Give me another chance. And it was part of Vancouver Island kind of messed me up mentally a little bit, getting
Mhm.
back in society. It gave me food issues, eating issues, a few different things. But anyway, I was still in that zone with nature. When you're out there, you kind of you just connect with nature so much. And
Mhm.
I craved it, came back home. And I wanted that again. But then also I wanted another shot at it. So, I wanted to go back immediately. And I actually talked to one of the casting ladies. I had gone to the show in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a knife show. It's called Blade. And I had seen her there. Like, when are you going to do, if there's any other type of show you're going to do, just call me up. And I
Right.
remember my kids, maybe a couple of seasons after my season, they're like, they're going to do a comeback season. They are. And I was like, well, maybe, and then when they contacted me, I was like, heck yeah, I want to go right now.
Yeah. That's
But
awesome.
I had no idea it was going to be as therapeutic as it was. I was fully planning on pushing myself even further than I did on Vancouver Island. And it turned out to be a completely different experience than Vancouver Island.
Yeah, because I remember you said on season 5, reflecting back to season 2, you said that oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. That this one was more of a you put so much pressure on yourself on season 2, and you weren't going to try to do that on season 5 and enjoy it a little bit more than
Well,
you
I
did.
came to that conclusion on the helicopter ride out when they were launching me, because in Mongolia, it was a one at a time launch. They had us all in this one area, and the helicopter launched folks one at a time. We had to go and refuel and then launch guys again. And we all had to give each other hugs,
Hmm.
because we know these. So we gave them hugs, good luck, stuff like that. Well, I was the last person to launch. So I was kind of already a wreck before, especially towards, and then the helicopter ride out, I could barely do, because the producers interviewing you, I could barely do my interview because I was just so emotional, because I had remembered, obviously, like I said, there's a lot of fantastic, great times out there, but then there's also a lot of hard times. And I was remembering all this big journey, thinking about my friends out there doing the same journey. Some of those folks, like Dave Nessia, you
Hmm.
want to talk about someone who lost some weight. That guy, the willpower on him, he almost starved himself to death. I'd
Right.
never seen anybody in my life.
Yeah.
So I just knew how tough these folks were, and I knew how tough they were going to push themselves, and how tough I was going to push myself, probably. So it was just a big emotional roller coaster. And I remember setting up my shelter crying, just going, there's no way to push myself. I'm like, and then so Mongolia, I did have a day. So right after I launched, I thought, okay, I got to make it 30 days, because anybody who can make it out 30 days in the woods has had the alone experience, and, did pretty good. So
Yeah.
I set myself a goal for 30 days in
Yeah.
Mongolia.
Was it about the money on Mongolia? So when you say, 30 days, you figured probably some, most, I don't want to say most, but they're going to make it past 30 days. So were you okay if 30 days was the end and you weren't going to win?
Well, I wasn't before I launched. I'm saying that my game plan completely changed once I got the slap in the face of launching in the helicopter.
Okay.
I through it before. I knew what was going to come. So, I wasn't scared of the challenge. It
Hmm.
was mentally all this stuff, all this back stuff that I kind of hadn't dealt with from Vancouver Island, the stuff I pushed in the way back far corners of my brain just attacked me. And it was not a pleasant ride.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Um, how did your 10 items change from Vancouver Island to Mongolia? Or did they?
Yeah, they did. I did not take a gill net in Mongolia. Yeah. Oh man, what a pain that thing was. But I didn't take a gill net, and I took trapping wire instead of um, an axe.
Okay.
So I had an axe in Vancouver Island. All I had in Mongolia was a saw, a big bow saw, and my knife, of course. And but I did not have a gill net, and I did not have the axe. And I changed it out for trapping wire and paracord.
Once you landed in Mongolia and saw the, was it a river or a lake?
River.
River. Did you wish you had the gill net or were you still confident? Were you okay?
No, I was okay. I didn't
Yeah.
want to get in cold water. That
Yeah.
water is Lake Superior cold. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like great cold. It's almost it's ready to ice over even in the middle of the summer.
Jeez.
And I did not want the added hassle. So I'm not very familiar with gill nets. I
Hmm.
mean, I got a crash course in Vancouver, but I did not want to deal with the current always tugging at that net and also the drift and stuff that comes down a river. And I grew up fishing rivers, so I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to fish it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about your best friends, the mice. Um,
Yep.
can you believe that they followed you all the way to Mongolia?
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely did. Mongolia, it had the added pressure. So not only were they just little jerks, just like they always are, but Mongolia had a pit viper that, I mean, the producers told us there was no antivenom for, and that it was up to the doctor, if you got to see a doctor,
Hmm.
um, which if they wanted to give you an antivenom that was close or just amputate your arm or your leg or whatever. And they're not very big snakes, but I would imagine that they probably eat mice.
Hmm.
And so I was, especially once they got in my bed, I was really worried about waking up next to a pit viper cuddling up with me. And
Oh
my
my gosh.
I never saw any pit vipers in my area, but actually the year after Mongolia
Hmm.
season, I took my wife back to Mongolia. Yeah,
Yeah.
we did it, and we went to just across the river from my site, and we probably jumped on this little horrible road where we had to walk about 6 miles to get there, but we probably jumped like 12 to 15 of those snakes or those pit vipers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's terrible. So did you was did you use the whole can of bear spray? And
Yes, I did.
you did. Were you
Yep.
scared about that? Like, what am I gonna do if a bear comes?
No, I wanted to test it out and see how good a bear spray it was,
Yeah.
and I wasn't really worried about bears. By this time, it had been a while,
Hmm.
and made sure and cooked a long ways. This was the only time well, Mongolia, I made a separate cooking shelter quite a ways away from my camp because they said uh, we actually had a guide from the area tell us that some Eurasian black bears had migrated down from Siberia due to forest fires. And those black bears were way more aggressive than regular black bears. And there's even a grizzly in the area. And the guide said, don't worry about the grizzly, worry about these black bears. So I made a shelter or another cooking area about 300-400 yards away. Well,
Yeah.
after nothing ever messed with that shelled area or anything, I started cooking closer to my camp.
Yeah.
And I was like, by this time it's getting cold. I haven't seen any bears. There's nothing. So I wasn't worried about using my bear spray. And then I started using it, and I thought, man, this stuff is weak. I mean, this is nothing. It just smells like peppers. Made my mouth water. That's
Uh,
about it.
Right. Oh man. Okay. So what was the actually, since we only have 10 minutes left, I'm gonna see which questions I wanna. Okay. So I know that you obviously were competing with 9 other people for the $500,000 prize. Was it always about beating someone else, or did it become more of proving to yourself that you could just do this?
Um, Mongolia was more of a healing process. We talked about that
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I'll go back to Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island, it wasn't so much about beating the other people as individuals. It was more about me being so competitive and putting so much pressure on myself that I wanted to win. It wasn't like, man, I hope I beat her or I hope I beat him or whatever. It was never personal or anything like
Right.
that. It was me wanting to do the absolute best that I could and kind of a little bit of an ego and probably, just a little bit of stubbornness, thinking these people don't realize how stubborn I am. I think I can go a really long ways. So it was for me, it was never about the money. It was more about proving stuff to myself and selfishly wanting to be the winner.
Yeah.
But not wanting to hurt the other people. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yep. Were you at the end of both seasons, were you proud of yourself? I mean, do you look back and you're like, "Oh my God, I did this not only once, but twice."
Yeah. Vancouver Island, it took me a long time to become proud of myself. And I talked to the boat captain, the guy, that drove the boat and would check on us once in a while, or bring the producers out and stuff. And what a nice guy, what a nice family. And I mean, he started my healing process right away because I mean, I was an emotional wreck. I just felt so down on myself.
Mhm.
And he's in his typical Canadian accent, which I can't do, but he's just like, you should be so proud of yourself. I mean, just uplifting me the whole time.
Yeah.
And then after the show aired, and after I started receiving all the support messages, and then just reflection, just yeah, I became quite proud of how I did. And then in Mongolia, I just keep coming back to that. I was proud of myself. Like I said, I figure out if you can last more than 30 days, then you're doing pretty good. And I was proud of myself for kind of coming full circle and making the experience more happy, I think. And I think I kind of connected. I mean, I connected with the land of Vancouver Island a lot, but I
Mhm.
also connected with the land and the people of Mongolia. And
Yeah.
the people was before and after the trip, and then also when I went back with my wife. So Mongolia holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And you got to end on a high note. It you could just tell at the end of season 5 for you that you felt okay that you were leaving, and it was such a different experience it looked like from season 2, and that made me happy to see that.
Yeah. I tried to make sure that I remembered the blessings that I have in my life in Mongolia. So I made a little bit of an equipment decision that kind of bit me in the butt a little bit. We were allowed two pair of pants, and depending on the location, the rules change a little bit as far as what gear you can bring.
Mhm.
But in Vancouver Island, I was allowed two pair of pants and one pair of rain pants. Mongolia, I was allowed two pair of pants, period. And I thought it was going to get really cold really fast. Well, it ended up being quite warm, and then sometimes a cold rain. And a cold rain to me can be more dangerous than 10 degrees or 5 degrees. So I
Right.
packed different types of wool pants. So I didn't want to go out when it was raining because I didn't want to get my pants wet. So it rained for 3 days straight one time, and I stayed in my shelter except for to go use the bathroom or hydrate in my shelter for 3 days, feeling the hunger pains, not really eating, not doing anything, just concentrating on what that felt like. This discomfort I knew was going to make me remember all the good things I have in my life, and remember and make the first taste of real food that much better. So I mean, I really concentrate. It's kind of sounds sadistic, but I concentrated kind of like punishing myself almost a little
Yeah.
bit, but not. It was more of a meditation
Mhm.
type abstinence type thing.
Yep.
And I do remember those 3 days quite vividly, and it has helped me.
Yeah, good. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you two last questions. Um, the first question is if you could give just one piece of advice to someone that would go on a show like Alone, or even specifically Alone, what advice would you give them?
Make sure you have your family support. I see so many of these folks that, and sometimes the TV can make it seem like they tap for a different reason. I don't know. I can
Mhm.
only speak from my experience. They showed me quite accurately with all my faults. But anyway, make sure your family's behind you. I had a family that was totally behind me. You can't go into this thinking, geez, my wife's mad at me, or my kids are missing me, or, I didn't take care of this, or I didn't take care of that. You have to have all your ducks in a row and make sure everybody's behind you. My employer was behind me. So I would say you need a good support network in addition to obvious skills. I think the skills are just a basic,
Right.
but you need a support network.
Yep. That makes sense because, man, once you get out there alone and you start thinking, and that could take you out really quick. I knew my wife, she really didn't want me here, and now I'm here, and that could definitely mess with you for sure.
Right.
So I have just one last question for you. So, Larry, in your own words, what does the bright side of life mean to you?
The bright side of life means looking at the small things in your life. There is always going to be great or maybe not always, but there's going to be times in your life where you have great vacations, great highs in your life, and there's going to be times where there's going to be great lows in your life. But my wife has kind of hammered this into my thick skull. Look at the little things in life. When I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I have to go to work, it sucks. It's miserable. I've got a long drive, but I really look forward to that first couple of sips of coffee, or drinking my coffee, or whatever, or listening to a podcast, or coming home. And even though the dogs are barking and it's a pain and I got to feed them, they're so happy to see me. They're just wagging their little tails or whatever. You get up and sure, it's cold and you got to do something, but you look at the frost on the trees and it's just beautiful. It's just the little things in life that is all that's what I hold on to. That's what I try to hold on to. And that helps me. You go out for a walk, try to connect with nature, try to just look, just some of the things that you can just see out in nature, just the different designs. Took a walk with my wife last Sunday, and just the snow designs, just sitting there kind of thinking, how does that even happen? And try to clear your mind. I was thinking about this a little bit before before our podcast today, and you need a little bit of mind clearing activity, some sort of a wholesome thing that kind of grounds you. It doesn't have to necessarily be a great passion. I know my wife is really good at this compared to me, but she'll set aside some time for yoga, or she'll set aside some time for something else. Now, on the other hand, she's a workaholic where I'm able to just chill. But for me, sure, I love going out in the woods and stuff, but it's still really fun for me. My son lives about an hour and a half away, and I get on PlayStation, and we get to play a video game together. And it's not necessarily about the video game. It's about us being able to talk through headsets, and we're still being able to connect that way. Or, when my daughter comes up and she brings her dogs, and I get to, even though her dog's kind of a pain in the butt, it's still really sweet. You get to rub its belly, or I get to, just little things in life. You just got to really concentrate on something that can clear your mind, that it's an entertainment, whether it be a couple of chapters in a book or whatever. You can't there's always going to be problems, and there's always going to be things. No one on their deathbed says that they wish they worked more. No one ever says they wish they dusted more, or they, whatever. They wish they were nicer to people. They wish they would have just taken a little more time to just live and enjoy the little things in life.
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the best answers I've ever received on this podcast. So I always ask my guests that at the end of the show. So that was a very good one.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, Larry, thank you so much for coming onto the show to share your story. And I wish you the best of luck with everything.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and stay well.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Bright Side of Life. I hope you enjoyed Larry's story of his experience on the show alone. I wanted to have him on the show because I saw what a mental transformation that show can have on people. Larry even said the first experience on Vancouver Island mentally broke him, but Mongolia healed him. And for him to be able to have the courage to do something like that, not only once, but twice, it's incredible. And if you would like to connect with Larry on social media, you can follow him on Instagram at back2basics64. That's back to basics 64. Or on his Facebook page, Larry Roberts. I will have both social media links in the show description. Lastly, if you know someone that may need to hear this story, please share it with them because we never know if this is the one that puts hope back in their heart.